All right, so today we're going to be starting with our CSS properties, and we're going to start with the first one, which is this text properties. And we'll be talking about the color, the font size, the font family, and the other one that we have on the list. So text property the properties you're going to be using to change the styles of your text. So whether you want to change the color of the text, or you want to change the size of the text, or you want to change the font of the text, you are going to be using text properties. And these are some of the properties that you can use. This is not all of them, but these are the basic one, or what you need to know under the text. But there's a lot of other one that we're going to be using later on. But for now, for us to quickly start working on something, so we are going to be talking about this basic one. And in the next class, we're going to jump into this background property. So what is color properties? What is this color property? I've been using it since, just that I've not really explained it better. So the color property is what you can use to change the color of the text. So right now the color of this text is black, but I don't want the text of the H1 to be black again. I want it to be a specific color that I want to use right now. But when you are talking about color, we have different ways of representing color. So when you are talking about the color, you have different ways that you can use to represent color. So we have named color, which is what I've been using right from day one, by putting red, blue, green, and so forth like that. So this is what we call the named color, because you can use the color based on their name. But when you are working in a real sense, you're not going to be using all this name color because they are too sharp and they are not that appealing to the screen there. So instead of us using this pure red, what we can do is to mix different colors together that can still give us red, but not that kind of a pure red that I'm currently seeing right now. And how do you do that? That's where this RGB comes in there. So this RGB is a function in the CSS that you can use to mix three colors together. So we have RGB, and inside this RGB, you are going to give it three things. They're like that, three number. But whatever number you are going to be giving for this X, Y, and Z, it has to be between 0 to 255. So RGB is used to mix three colors together. The first color is red, the second one is green, and the third one is blue. So the function of this RGB is to mix three colors together, and those colors that you mix together are going to generate another set of color for you. But how are you going to mix them together? So inside this bracket here, you are going to give it three number, and that number that you'll be using is between this 0 and 255. You cannot use any other number apart from this one. If you use any other number, then nothing will work, because the color are based on 0 to this 255. So for the value of X, is going to be 0 all the way to 255. For the value of Y, is going to be the same, and for the value of Z, is going to be the same. So I'm just using X, Y, Z to represent whatever value you are going to be putting inside this bracket. So for example here now, for the red, I want it to be 54. So for the green, I want it to be 100. And for the blue, which is the last one, I want it to be 150 like this. So what we are doing here, we are mixing three colors together. And as you can see what they produce, they are giving us this blue. And why is it giving us blue? Is because we have more blue than the other one. So we only have 50, like the red is really small. The green is actually close to the blue, but we have more of value for blue. And that is why you see that the color is close to blue. But it's not technically blue, it's just a representation of it. And as you can see, we have this color coming out on the screen. It's not totally blue, because when you're talking about blue, that one is too sharp. But if you look at this one, it's more cool. It's blue, but it's cool compared to you using the name color that is going to use the entire color that you mentioned. So if you mention red, it's always going to be red, nothing like blue there and nothing like green. But with this RGB function, we can mix three colors together. So the R there is for red, the G there is for green, and the B there is for blue. And this allows us to mix these three colors together to generate another set of color. Again, I can use my RGB. So for the red is going to be 100, for the green is going to be 120, and for the blue it's going to be 100 too. So 100 for this, and now saving it, you see that it's now giving us this kind of a grayish color like that. So it's between this place, as you can see, the green is here, and the blue is there, and at the same time the red is here. So the green is having more value, that's why it's close to green, but other one too, they are there. So it's giving us this kind of a cool green, or this kind of a grayish green that we are having on this screen. The major thing is that when you are dealing with colors, you can generate it through the name color, or you can use this RGB function in CSS to generate color. And what you'll be doing there is just to mix these three colors together. And you don't need to stress yourself, because most of the time you will not be scratching your head to get colors. Most of the design you want to work with, they will give you the color that you need to use there. So you're a developer, not a designer. So your job is to translate whatever the designer has designed for you into a proper design. But those colors that the designer will be using, you need to translate them to a proper code. And these are different ways. So you can, if the color that they're using is just a popular one and it have name, you can just use the name. But most of the color they always use don't have the name attached to them. So how do you now represent them? That's where this RGBA comes in. And another one that we have here is this hexadecimal code here. So hexadecimal, not the hexadecimal. What is that? It's wrong. This one is wrong. So it's supposed to be this. So hexadecimal code. So this is another way of you generating color. So we've talked about two ways now. The one with the named color, so you can call it red, you can call it Rebecca blue, any color that you know and you know their name, just type it, it's going to bring out the color. But instead of us using their name, we can use RGB function to do the same thing. And as you can see here, if I over on this, can you see this is the color code where you're using RGB for that Rebecca blue. So instead of us using Rebecca blue, this is the code that you need to use when you are dealing with RGB. So it's the Rebecca blue is the same thing as you mixing red of 102, green of 51, and blue of 153. And that's what is going to give you this Rebecca blue. So it's not every time that you have to have the name of the color. Once you have the code, just use RGB and you pass the number there. But don't forget, the number is always between 0 and 255. It can't go less than 0, and it can't go more than 255 there like that. And apart from these two methods, we have this hexadecimal mode, or another way of representing color. So when you want to use this one, it always come in this format like this. So it always start with the hash. Then after the hash, it can be these 3, it can be 4, it can be 6, and it can be 8. But what are you going to be using for this XYZ here? The value is going to be the hexadecimal number. That's where the name is coming from. So when you're talking about hexadecimal number, it's just this one here, where you have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then you now have A for 10. You have B, D, then you have E, and you have F. This is what we call hexadecimal number, and that's what I just short here. 0 to 9 is just representing this side, while A to F is representing what I have here. So the mixing of these numbers together along with this hash is what we call the hexadecimal color. So with hexadecimal color, you can generate color instead of you using this name color or using this RGB. If they are doing the same thing, it's doing the same thing like this RGB. So the first number, you can think of it as the red, the second one as the green, and the third one for the value of blue. So whatever number you be giving for this X, Y, and Z is just whatever you have from this hexa digit number here. But in order for it to recognize it, it needs to start with the hash. Then whatever that follows it maybe 3 letter or 4 letter or 6 letter or 8 letter are there, it's going to generate the appropriate color based on the hexadecimal number that you mix together. For example, now if I have this A, it can be capital letter or small letter, but I will be using small letter. So AF3, as you can see here now, is generating this color for us, and this is the representation of it in RGB mode. So when you're using RGB, this is what you have to type, but in hexadecimal color there, this is what we need to type to get the same color. So once I save it down, you see that the color now is now using what I have here. So hexadecimal always start with hash, then followed by any of the letter that I just type out in this place. So hexadecimal is just a number from 0 to 9, then A to F to represent 10 all the way to 15. So this is 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. But you don't use 10 because in hexadecimal word, there's nothing like 10. So what you have is A, B, C, D, E, F. So when you now mix any of these things together in 3 like this, or in 4, or in 6, you are going to get the corresponding color that you want. And just like what I mentioned before with the RGBA, you don't need to start cramming all these things. You don't need to cram them. As you can see in VS Code, you can actually pick any color you want. And if you want the code in RGB, as you can see, you can click on any of these things and it will switch the code for you, because they are doing the same thing. The difference is just the way you are generating them. So we are doing in X. The color you are going to get in X is still the same color you are going to get when you are using RGB, just that you are doing it in a different way. So this is the color code when it is in RGB, but if I take it to X now, as you can see, the color code has been generated. As you can see here, it is 6 here. So I have to generate this color, and I told you it can be in 3 like this, it can be in 4, it can be in 6, and it can be in 8, depending on the color you are trying to generate. So if I remove the first one, as you can see, another color is being generated here, like that. And if I remove 1 again, which is going to be 3, as you can see, another color 2 is being generated. It's still green, but it's giving us different shade of that green. So save, and as you can see now, we have the color. So you can have it like this, X, Y, and Z, or A, B, C here. They are just representing whatever number that you have here. But you won't be the one that will be generating all this color yourself. It will be coming from design. But the designer that is going to be giving you this design can bring the color in different mode, or you yourself can represent the color in different mode, because they are all the same. So the way we are getting this color now through the X now, as you can see, this is the code to get it using RGB. So if I click on this stuff here now, I can switch from one mode to the other one. And once I save, as you can see, we are still going to have the same thing. So you can represent your color through its name, or you can represent your color through this RGB mode here, or you can use hexadecimal color. Each one of them are going to give you the same result once you pass the correct code there. If you pass the correct code, you get the color, but each mode can actually generate same color for you once you know the code that you need to pass there. But the major thing you need to know right now is representation, and that's what I call it, representation here, because we are not about you cramming color code. No, we are not doing that. What I'm doing right now is to show you different ways that the color can be represented here. So once you see it, you know that, oh, this is X code. Once you see this, oh, this is RGB mode there, or this RGB way of representing color. Oh, this is the name color. You're actually generating the color based on its name. And I told you, not all the colors that we have name attached to them. Not all of them have name. So which means most of the color you'll be using later on, you have to use this RGB, or you have to use the X, or you have to use this other method here, which is known as HLCell. So this HLCell is another mode that you can use to generate color. So when you're using HLCell, this is a function too in CSS. So HLCell is another function, and this HLCell comes with what we will refer to as hue. So that H there is known as the hue color. So the S is known as saturation, but it's in percentage. While the L is for lightness. So the L is for lightness, and that one too is in percentage are there like that. And how do they work? So this U is a number that we are using, or the computer is using, to represent different color on a wheel. So we have some primary color that's so let me bring it out. We have something known as color wheel. And when you're talking about color wheel, this is just a representation of a different color in a 360 mode. So these are different primary color that you can actually mix them together to form other color. So it started from 0 and it go all the way back to 360. And as you can see, 0 is around this red like that. Let me bring out the correct one, because normally 0 is always red like that. So when you're talking about color wheel, it's just something in computer, or a number that computer are using to represent different color. And it started from 0. As you can see, it's circle. And you know anything circle is always 360. Starting from 0, round around the stuff, and you go back to 0, which is 360 there. So this number now, they are assigned to a particular color. As you can see, yellow is somewhere here, which is around that 90 something. So when you get here to green, it means you'll be using around that 180. So this one is around that 270, and so forth like that, all the way back to 0, which is red. So starting from 0, that is red. You keep moving all the way to yellow, to green, to blue, and back to red here. So this color that you are seeing on this wheel, there is a number attached to them, and that number here is what we call the U here. So you are going to mention the color that you want based on the U number that we have there, and the number is from 0 to 360. If you give it a number more than 360, it will convert it to that range. So which means if you give it like 400, it will divide that 400 by 360, and whatever number you get, that's what is going to give you there. So the U. So the next thing that follows it here is the saturation, which talk about the pureness of the color. I'm going to show you all this in practical there. I'm going to show the practical stuff, but I'm just explaining what is going on there. And for this one, this is the lightness. How light did you want your color, or how dark do you want that color to be? For example, here now, if I put 0, it means I'm talking about red. And how do I know that it is red? Is because on the color wheel, the first one there is red, which is 0. So it's starting from 0 and is moving back all the way to 360, which is still the same thing as 0. So whether you use 360 or 0, you still referring to the same thing, because circle, where you start from, that's where you are going to end there like that. So the first number that you are going to supply is a U, and the number is between this 0 to 360. Again, you will not be the one that is going to be doing all this thing yourself. You are going to get all this thing from the designer, but you need to know what this thing are doing there. That's why I'm explaining it, because later on we are going to be manipulating this value for some design, and you need to know the reason why we are doing that. So the second one is the saturation level, which is between 0% to 100%. So when you use 100%, it means that color is using the pure of that color there. That means it's using the entire color. So if it is red, that means it's using total red. If it is blue, it means it's using total blue, and so forth like that. And the last one is the lightness. How light is that your color, or how dark? So if the stuff is 50%, it means it's not light and it's not dark. And once I save this thing now, you see that we are going to get pure red. The reason why we are getting pure red is because on the color wheel, the red is 0. And here for the saturation, we are using 100%. That means the red is totally present. But what if I don't want the red to be present? I just need 20% of the red. You see that we are going to get red. Can you see that now? It's not pure, because we are only using 20% of that red. So we don't, as you can see from the color, you can see that it's pure here. This is, if you open it, you can see the color is pure here, but at this side is not pure. So this is what you can use to control the saturation of the color. So if I use 70%, you see that it's going to get closer to that 100%. And once you use 0, it means that color is not there at all, which means it's going to be gray color. As you can see, so you are not using the colors. Saturation determines whether that color is present or not. If it is present totally, that's 100%. Then if it is not, if it is halfway, that's 50%. So which means this color is not totally pure, and at the same time it's still not done. And as you can see, it's still red, but it's halfway. So it's in between the gray and the normal red. You are just using half red. You are not using the total red. But if I use 100 here, you see that it's going to use pure red. And again too, it doesn't need to be red. I can change this into another color. For example, I can use 90. So it's going to pick the color. As you can see now, the color is now different. And if you go to the color wheel, you see that it's coming to somewhere around this area here, which is not bad. But instead of you doing it yourself from there, you can actually do it in VS Code. So this is it here. This is the hue color. So you can switch from one hue to another one. So you start from 0, as you can see from the color code at the top, and it go all the way back to 0 because it's still the same thing as 360. Because this thing now is supposed to be round, but you know in VS Code it can't show round for us. That's why it represents it as a line. So you start with red, and at the same time it's ending with red. But in between, you can move into any one of them. So from red, it goes to yellow, like that. And as you can see, it's going to show the color that we want on the page. And as it's kind of close to orange and yellow, like that. But what is this lightness? This is what you can use to control whether this your color is in dark form or is in light form of it. So 50% means it's not light and it's not dark. It's in between. But if I use like 20%, no, once you go down, you start getting dark version of the same color. So lightness, as you can see, we don't have much light. We only have 20% of the light. It's just like you are in your room and you are using torchlight. It's not everywhere that the light is going to touch there like that. So and that's what is going on here too. So we have 20% there. So which means the lightness is not that much. We have more darkness inside the box. And if you go above 50, it means you are close to white. So when you go above 50, you are getting close to white. And when you go below 50, you are getting close to black. So if I go to 10, you see that we are going to black. It's not black, it's still that color, but it's having 10% of light. We don't really have much light on that color. This one control the saturation of it, like the pureness of the color, which move from here to here. So this is 0% and this is 100%. And when you are talking about this lightness, it control this movement from up or down like this. So this is lightness. It control from here to here. So if you use 100%, as you can see, it will turn everything to white. You are not going to see again because you are having total light. So when the light is really much, what do you see? You start seeing white. So here, if your value is below 50, you are getting close to white. And if your value is less than 50, you are getting close to dark. It all depends on what you want. So if I use 30%, it's still going to be that color, but I don't have any percentage for saturation. Let me put it to 100. As you can see, right now it's still red, but it's not having much light, so it is dark red. If I want a light red, I just need to go to maybe around that 90. It's still going to give me red, but now as you can see, it's close to white. So with this HSL, you can use it to control the saturation and the lightness of that your color, which can give you some design or nice design later on when you are dealing with color and the background together. So here now, I have a color that is using this one as a color. So I can use a background of the same color, but this one now, instead of it to be light, is going to be a darker version of it, like 10%. So once I save it now and go back to the page, you see that, can you see? The background is using the dark version of that color, while the text is using the light version. As you can see, they are the same. The difference is just the lightness. They are the same color. So for the color, the text itself is using 90%. So which means the lightness, we have more white inside that color. But for the background, that one is using 10% for the lightness. It means we have more dark. And as you can see, it gives all this kind of a nice design where the same color are being used for the text and along with the background on that text are there. You are going to see this thing being used a lot later on. And HSL make it easier for us to manipulate the color, because what you can just do is to quickly manipulate the light. But when you are dealing with RGB, it's not that easy to do. You have to start adjusting it here yourself with RGB. But with HSL, it's quite easy to manipulate the lightness and the saturation of the color. So when you need to manipulate the saturation level and the lightness level of the color, you can use HSL. But if you don't care about that, you can use any one of them. But majorly, you always see me using any of these three methods here. So anywhere we are working on a recent, I will always be using these three methods. I don't use name because name will not give all this kind of a nice color based on the design that we're going to be working on later on there. So the color, these are different ways that you can represent them. This is not all. We still have other methods, but these are the one you always see later on there. And at the same time, when we started dealing with transparency there in the color, we are still going to come back to all these one, because you can actually create a transparency. There's another wheel here, so I've not explained what this one is doing. This is what you can use to create transparency there, but once we get to the background in the next class, I will explain what this one is doing, and you can put them in your code, and it's going to create this kind of a view where you can see what is at the back of that color. But currently, right now, we cannot see what is at the back of this color. Anything you apply, you cannot see what is at the back of it, but later on you should be able to see the content at the back of that color. That's where the alpha channel will now comes in. But for now, these are different ways that you can use to represent your color. So you can use the name color. If you know the name of the color, you can use the RGB to mix three colors together, which is the red, green, blue. You can use the hexadecimal color code there to generate your color, or you can use your HSL, which allows you to control the saturation and the hue level of the color that you want to work with. So you can have the same color and you are going to add different shade. We have something called shade. It's the same color, but you can add a light version of it, 30% light of it, and so forth like that. Let me show you what I mean by that. So in colors, we have something called tint and we have something called shade. So we have color shade like that. So these are some stuff that the designer are going to generate for you. Not that you be the one that will be generating all this thing, but it's something you need to know too as a developer. There like that. So when you're talking about color shade, you see that the same color, but it's come in different variant. Starting with the dark one, a little bit dark, all the way to the light area of that same color. So this is what we call shade. So you have the same, it's still the same red, but you can see it's come with different shade. Where you have the dark one all the way to the light version of it. So how do you generate something like this? You can use HSL to do it easily in CSS like that. And apart from shade, let me show it. I think this one is more clear. As you can see, the same red, this is the dark one. It goes all the way to the light version of it. And as you can see that this thing is using the lightness to generate it. But apart from this, we can generate tints. So we have something known as color tint, which is what I mentioned. That's saturation now. So when you want to generate color tint, you'll be using saturation to do that. So this one control the movement of the color from that color all the way to the gray area. So that's what we call the tint. But you are not going to be the one that will be generating all this thing. It will be coming from the designer. As you can see, it started from that red and it started moving all the way to the gray color or to the dark color. So this is what we call shade here. This is what we call tint. This is what we call tint, and this is what we call shade. So so forth like that. Depend on how English they are using the English to represent it, but they are still the same. You can move from that same color all the way to the black or the gray version of it, or you can move from the same color all the way to the light version of it. And how do you do this thing with your CSS? You can use that HSL, because with HSL you can control the saturation and the lightness level. So based on this lightness, you can move from the light version of the color all the way to the dark, or from the dark to the light. And if you don't want it to be dark and you don't want it to be light, you only leave it as 50%. So this means halfway. It's not light and it's not dark. But if you want a lighter version of that color, you go above 50. If you want a darker version of that color, you go below 50 there like that. And that's how this thing work. But you're going to be seeing all this thing coming in later on from the design. So I won't be explaining what all this thing mean again. We'll just be using them at that point, because I'm explaining them right now for you there like that. So you can represent your color in any of this way. Apart from that, under the text, another thing that we can do there is to change the size of our text. So by default, all H1 are always bigger than every other text on the screen. All H1 are always bigger than every other text on the screen. All H1 are always bigger than all the text on the screen. But how can we change the size of our text? So I want it to be smaller, or I want it to be bigger, or I want it to be a particular size. So we can use this font size to change the size of our text. Just like the way you can change the color of your text, you can change the size of the text. And in order for you to change the size of the text is by using this font size. This is a properties that you can use to change the size of your text. And if you remember last time, we talked about CSS unit. So this property here, when you want to use it, most of the value or the number you are going to be giving to it, you need to supply a unit along with that number. For example, here now, if I put 4 rem, which is something we've talked about, I told you rem means that whatever number you have beside it, you are going to multiply by the font size of the HTML. And I told you by default, the font size of the HTML is 16 if you don't change it on your system or any devices that you'll be using there to view your site. If you don't change the font, it always defaults to 16. So which means here, I want to change my text, the size of it, from whatever it used to be before to this 4 rem. And what is 4 rem? This is going to be 4 times 16. And whatever the number it gives you, that's what you are going to have there. And I have an extension here which used to show me the value in pixels. So this 4 rem, if your font size is 16, is at the same thing as you typing 64 pixels. And once I save it now, you see that all the H1 on the screen, their text is going to get bigger there. So all the H1 on the screen, what is going on? So all the text on the screen, I don't know, my screen just freeze. What's all this? Let me pause. Back. Alright, so as you can see now, all the H1 on the screen, they are now of this size. So font size is what you can use to change the size of your text. So if I use 1 rem, you see that all the H1 now will look like normal text on the screen. So with font size, you can change the size of your text depending on the design that you are working on. If you go to some pages, you see that some texts are really big, while some are kind of a small are there like that. So if you look at it here, the title we have here is the title, but it's of a specific size. So you can use your font size to change it like that. This one too is still going to be H1, but it's not having the same font size that we have right now for our normal H1. So with the help of font size, you can change it to any value you want. So if I want this to be really big, I can change it to this 6 rem, and as you can see on the screen, the text is going to get bigger like this. And if I want it to be really small, I can go down to all the way to this 0.5 pixels rem like that, and as you can see, it's going to be smaller compared to the other text on the screen. So with the help of font size, you can give any size you want to your text, not just to the H1, to any text that you have on the page. Just select it, and because I'm selecting H1 right now, that's the reason why it's only changing H1. But if I want, I can actually change the P text on the screen, and as you can see, it will only affect the P tag on the screen. So whatever element you are targeting here, you can change the size of the text by using this font size. So font size is what you can use to change the font or the text size of your text. This is what is there by default for H1. As you can see, it's having the same value. This is what is there by default for H1 if you don't change it. But if I want, I can take it to 3 rem, which is the same thing as 48 pixels. So whether I type 48 pixels here or 3 rem, you see that it's still going to be the same like that. The only time they are not going to be the same is when the font size of the HTML change. But if the font size of the HTML did not change from 16 pixels, 48 pixels is still the same thing as 3 rem. But if it's changed, then they are not going to be the same. The calculation will be based on the new value of the HTML that you are working with there like that. So font size is what you can use to quickly change the size of the text that you are currently working on. Apart from this font size, we have another property here that you can use, which is known as this font family. So font family is what you can use to change the interface of your text. Look at the way that our S is displaying here. Look at the way the C it's coming out. Look at the way the P is coming out. But let's go to other sites. Look at their own T. You can see that their own T, their own R, their own A, their own D, their own C is actually different from our own. So the way the C is being represented here is different from the way we have it on our own page. So look at the C here, look at the P. So how do we change the interface of the text? That's where the font family comes in. So the font family, you can use it to change the font of the text that you are working with. So you can use font family to change the text that you are working with. And each text that you want to come with, you want to use, or each font that you want to use, belong to a particular family, and that's why the name is font family. So each font that you want to use, or each interface that you want to use, they belong to a particular family. So we have something known as a sans serif. This is one family. Another family that we have there is known as this sans. So this is what the browser is using by default. And again, we have some other family known as this mono space. This is another family. I'm going to use them soon. Again, we have cursive. This is another family. So any font that is coming from this family, they are fonts that doesn't have this kind of a pencil mark that you can see on this S. So if you look at this S, you see that there is kind of like some pencil mark that is coming from each one of them. So if you don't want this kind of a mouth that each one of them is having here, we can use a font that is coming from sans serif. But if you need something like this, which is what the browser is using by default, they always come from this sans family. So when you're talking about mono space, this one is talking like a typewriter font. So just like the way typewriter used to be, so if you need any font in that word of typewriter, you can use any font that is coming from mono space. And when you're talking about cursive, these are fonts that are in slant form. So any font that are in slant form, you can use them. So let me go to this site where we can get font later on. This is where we can go to get different font family for our design. So this font.google, you can go there and download any font for your application there that you want to build. So they have different fonts that you can use, ranging from that sans serif to sans all the way to monospace and the cursive and the like here. So any font in this type, they are referred to as sans serif. So this is sans serif, but look at this one now. As you can see, it has all this kind of curvy stuff. Or let me go down to the one that it's more. So this one too is still sans serif, but let me find a font that is curved. So let me see if I can see a font that is curved. Yeah, can you see here? So this one is what we call cursive here. So this one is coming from a cursive family. So any font that behave like this, that have all this kind of a curve that are joined together like this, they are known as cursive. So any font that have this kind of a pencil mark, they are known as sans. So if I click on it and this thing is load, you are going to see that it's actually coming from a family or serif rather. So this is it. This one's supposed to be serif. Sorry, this one's supposed to be serif like that. And as you can see, the family name is this serif here. But apart from that serif, we have other one which is known as sans serif. So any one of them that doesn't have that, can you see it is coming from sans serif? And for the one that are cursive like this one now, they are always coming from the cursive family like that. So how do you do all this thing? You can actually generate them and apply it on the page by using some of the fonts you have on your system, or you can go to that Google font to download some of those cursive fonts that I just showed right now. But for now, we are going to be using the one that we have on the system, because the way this thing works is that you can't just use any font anyhow. That font must be present on the system. If it's not present on the system, it's going to use the default one that the browser used to use by default. But if you don't want it to use what the browser used to use by default, you can actually talk to it that you want it to use a particular font. For example, here now, I can just use a sans serif, and once I save it, can you see now? it has changed. So the way the H is being displayed before is now different. So any font that doesn't have that pencil mouth, they are coming from this sans serif family. But if you want that pencil mouth, you can use the serif like this. So serif, as you can see, now the H is having that kind of a pencil mouth, all this sharp edge. So they always come from this serif family. Another one that I talked about is monospace. This one behaves like a typewriter font, and it's using the default one here, but you can actually mention some other fonts that are of typewriter, but they are coming from this family. Another one that I mentioned is cursive. So any font that is curved, they are always coming from this family. And this thing is using the default one that I have on my system. But that doesn't mean you are limited to this. You can actually mention any font that you know that you have on your system. But later on, you are not going to be using the font on your system, because the user that want to use the site, they are not going to be using your system to visit the site. And that's the reason we are going to be going to that Google font later on to download a font, and you are going to see how to connect it to your page later on there. But for now, we want to use the one that we have on our system. These are some of the fonts you can find on the system, like this area here. Again, another one you can find on your system, which is always common, is this area black. And once I save it, can you see it's changing to each one of the fonts that I mentioned here. But any font that has space is always good that you put them in a quote like that. So you see some of them, they'll be put in a quote. Some of them are not going to put in a quote. But it's always good that you put them in a quote like this anytime the name is having space or a legal character. As you can see now. What's going on? Hello? Can you hear me? Can you see hear me? All right, can you see hear me? Oh yeah,
Yes,
so
I can.
yeah, so this font family now, you just need to mention the font that you want to use like that. But you might be wondering, how are you going to know the font to use? Whatever design you want to work with later on, all these things will be specified there. The font you need to use will be mentioned, so it's that less for you to now connect to that font. But some of them, they are not going to be available in your system. So what do? You can actually use this font.google that I show you now to download that font that the designer will be using. For example now, these are some of the design that we are going to be working on later on. And if you check them, under each one of them, you are going to see that there is a style guide. This is the one that will tell you what you need to use in your project. So what are the color you need to use, what are the fonts you need to use, and so forth like that. So once I drag this thing into VS Code, as you can see, for this project now, can you see, these are the colors. So for the purple, this is the color code. And as you can see that, it's being represented as HSL that I just talked about. So for the light red, this is the color that they are using. So for the off-white, this is it here. For the light gray, as you can see, they are using HSL to represent the color. And by now, you know that this is the hue value, this is the saturation value, and this is the lightness value. And as you can see, the value is low, which means it will be black, because I told you anything less than 50 is going to black, anything above 50 is going to white. And as you can see here, it is 100%. That's why it is white, because white, the lightness is always 100%. Off white, as you can see, is 94. It's just 6% off. That's why it is off white. 6% off from white, and so forth like that. Again too, can you see the font family? So for the design, they are telling us that the font we need to use is popping. And this popping here now, can you see the address has been provided for us, which is this font to Google. So if I click on it, you see that it will redirect us to this font.google, which is going to have popping as part of the search. So on this site now, we can just go there, and we are going to use this popping to connect to our site as a font. But for now, we don't care about all this thing. Is when we get to actual design that we start using them. And as you can see, everything I'm talking about right now is what is on those design there. So fonts family is what you are going to use to change the font of your text, because all the design that you want to work on, they have their specific font you need to use. And this thing is going to be given to you by the design that you want to work on there like that. You're going to see the style guide, what you need to follow for the styling, what are the color you need to use for the design, and at the same time, what is the font that you need to use for the text, what is the font family you need to use, and so forth like that. You are going to see all of them inside that style guide. But this font family property is what you can use to specify the font family. But what if the font is not available on your system? You can actually supply multiple fonts. So you can supply font 1, font 2. So you can supply font 1, comma, font 2, font 3, and so forth like that. So this one you can do it in this way. So what this means is that when this first font is not available, try to use the second one. If the second one is not available, try to use the third one. That's what this thing is talking about. When you see different fonts being used together on the same line, what that thing means is that you can use any one of them, or you are talking to the browser that try the first one. If it is available, use it, then forget about the other one, because it will always start from the first one. If the first one is available, use it, then forget about the remaining one. But if it is not available, then try the second one. If the second one is available, use it, forget about the third one. But if it's not available, then try the third one, and so forth like that, depending on the number of fonts you are specifying on that line. For example, here now, I can just use the one that is inside this VS Code, which I can just type this system UI like this. As you can see, this thing is specifying multiple fonts on the same line. So what this thing is saying is that try this font first. If it is available on that system, use it and forget about the other one. But if it's not available, then go to the second one. Try that one. As you can see, this one now. If this one will work on Windows, while this one will work on the Mac OS there. Because this one is always available on Windows, while this one is always available on the Mac. So when this one, when you check it on Mac there, it will not see this one. So since it's not going to see this one, it will try the second one. And when it try the second one, which is always available, this one is always available on Mac, this one too is always available on the Windows, because it's going to pick the default font that is available for that operating system. But instead of me doing it like this, I can actually specify other font too, like this. So try this Sigo UI, but if it's not available, try Roboto. If Roboto is not available, try Oxygen. If Oxygen is not available, try Ableton, and keep trying all of them. And if none of them is available, just pick the default one that is coming from that family. Because I told you, this is a family of all the fonts that doesn't have pencil mat. For those ones that have pencil mat, they are coming from serif. For those ones that looks like typewriter, they are coming from monospace. And for those ones that are curved in nature, they are coming from this cursive. And this is a pattern you only see all the same being used. It will only use one out of them, not all of them. Only one will be used. And as you can see right now, he's using this Siguro UI like that. So if you put something that it doesn't recognize here, it will go back to its default font. So for example, if I just type Abdul Rakib like this, and I type Abdul like this, and if I save, you see that it still go back to its normal flow. So which going back to its normal font like this, because none of them is available on my system. I don't have any font known as Abdul Rakib, or I don't have any font known as Abubakar or my this thing like that. So whatever stuff you are mentioning here, it must be available on your system. If it's not on your system, it will go back to the one you used to use by default. And that's the reason why you should always put the family at the end of each one of them. So here now, if I use Abu and if I use Abdul like this, so what this thing will do is that it will try Abu. So if Abu is not available on my system, it will try Abdul. Then Abdul too is not available on my system because there is no font like that on my system. Then it will not default to the family on the system. And once I save it now, as you can see, it is now using sans serif. It tried Abdul, it did not see anything like that. It tried Abdul too, nothing like that on my system. So it will fall back to the default one that is coming from the family. But if you don't put the family at the back of the font, as you can see, the browser will go to its normal font. Once it check all these things and it cannot find them, it will go back to its normal font. And what is there by default that the browser is using is this serif. So this is what is using by default. So whether I type this in or I don't type it, as you can see, is the same thing. So this is what the browser is going to fall back to when you put a font that it doesn't recognize on your system. But just like the way I mentioned, whatever font you want to use, there's no way you'll be depending on the one on your system, because the user that will be checking your site are not going to be using the system. The people that develop this site here, they are not thinking, oh, because this user now I want to visit my site, or because the font is available on my site, the user too will see the same thing. No, they are not going to see anything if the font is not available. But how do you do it? You can actually talk to the browser to download the font for them. Not that it will install it to, it will use it for that particular site. And once you leave the site, that's the end of it. The only time you go to that site, that's when the browser is going to download the font for them. And how do you do it? That's where this font comes in, which is something you can do yourself, or you can do with this Google font. With Google font, you can come here to search for different fonts that you want to use for your project. And once you search for the name of the font, it will bring you to a page where you can get the font. As you can see here, you can click on the get font. And once you click on the get font, as you can see, you can get the code that you can put inside your HTML there. And these are the code you need to put. And once you put the code in your HTML, then you'll be able to use the name of the font. But for now, I don't want to do that. I'm going to remove all of them. I don't have any font here. Once you get to the project we want to work on, that's when I'm going to show you this one. But for now, I'm only talking about how you can change the text font family to another one there. And before we call it what is time? It's almost time. Let me quickly finish all this property on time, because I want to start with the background in the next class. Or if I'm not able to finish it, then I will continue from there and I will move into the background. So the other one we have here is the font width, which is what you can use to change the thickness of your text. As you can see, by default, all your texts are H1 to H6. They are always bold. And again, too, you can make any text to be bold by using B tag or by using strong tag. So instead of you doing it in that way, you can actually use the font weight in CSS to change the weight of your text. And the weight is started from 100 all the way to 900. So each one of them here is corresponding to the thickness. Starting from 100, which is the lightness, highest there. And again, too, it depends on the font you are using. The way those numbers will work is depending on the font you'll be using there. So let me show you from Google Fonts so that you can see how each one of them will look like. So for example, like this Roboto now, as you can see, it's come with different weights. So when you use weight of 100, this is how the text is going to look like. So when you use weight of 200, this is how the text is going to look like for the font. And when you use weight of 300, as you can see, it's getting thick one by one based on the text. So when you use 400, this is the thickness of the text. So when you use 500, this is the thickness of the text. That's what you're going to get when you're using Roboto. And you mentioned your font weight to be 600. This is how it's going to look like. So when you're using Roboto and you mention the font weight to be 700 or to be bold, this is how the text is going to come outside like that. And when you mention 800 and it is Roboto you are using, as you can see, this is how the text is going to come outside. And lastly, the highest one is 900. So this is how it's going to look like. And not all the fonts that have the weight that you are looking for. So some of them, they only have one particular weight, while some of them are from 100 to 900. Like this font now, I think it only have one. As you can see, it only have one. So you can only use 400. You can't use any other weight. So this font only have 400. It doesn't have any other weight. As you can see here, you can only use 400. But for some of them, you can use from 100 to 900. Some of them, you can only use from 400 to 800. Some of them, you can only use from 600 and above. It all depends on the font that you want to work with there like that. So each one of the fonts have their weight. And the design you want to work with too will tell you the weight that you are going to be using for it. Again, let me open this in like that. You see that inside this style guide for this design, you see that we are going to be saying the value that we need to use there. What's going on? VS Code. Let me drag this in again. So going down, as you can see, for this poppy now, the design is telling you that you are going to be needing the weight of 400, you are going to be needing the weight of 700, and you are going to be needing the weight of 800. So which means in this design, which is this design here, the text you are going to be using there, some of them are 400, some of them are 800, while some of them are 700. So in this project, the text, the weight of your text is going to be 400, some of it is going to be 800, while some is going to be 700 because of the project you are working on. So the project is going, as you can see here, can you see that the text is really bold here? So this is 800 here. So some of them is going to be 700, while some of them is going to be 400. So where is the 400 on? Those are the normal text. So when you're talking about 400, those are the normal text, which is going to be this error message. Once I go to that design, so let me go to the design where it have the error message like that. So where are you? So as you can see here now, so if you look at all this one, they are just normal text. They are not bold. It's just normal text. But if you look at the one here, this is 700, or this is 700 here. But if you look at this one, this is around that 800 like that. So the same text, but it can come in different weights. And how do you specify the weight in CSS? You are going to be using this font weight based on the font that you are using in your projects are there like that. So if the project is telling you to use 700, then here you are going to use 700. And 700 is the same thing as bold. 700 is the same thing as bold that we normally use, like that B tag and strong. This is what they are doing behind the scene. Anytime you use the B tag or anytime you use strong tag, what they are doing behind the scene is to set this font weight to 700, which is what is there by default. As you can see, no changes. But if I want, I can change it to 400. So which means all our H1 now, they are just going to be normal text, as you can see here. So they are going to be normal text. But if you don't want it to be normal text, you can just take it to 700. And as you can see here now, they are going to be bold like that. And if the font you are using support 900, you see that it's going to be thick compared to what we had before. But if the font is not supporting it, nothing will happen. You will not see anything. It will only default to the highest one that it can find there. So you can't just use the number anyhow. Again too, I can't just use 100. If this font doesn't support 100, it will not work. As you can see, it only stop around that 400 like that. So it looks like 400 and this thing looks alike. Why? Because this font that is using currently doesn't support 100. So it's not all of them that support all this weight. You have to look at that your font that you want to use, and you have to check whether it supports that weight or not. If it supports it, you see that it will change. If it doesn't support it, it will default to the one that it can find there like that. So if I use 700, it actually supporting 700, and as you can see, the text is now bold. Or instead of me using the 700, I can just say bold. You say the same thing. Behind the scene, CSS is going to, or the browser is going to convert this bold to 700. This border, you can think of it as 800 like that. Again, we have normal. Normal is the same thing as 400. So when you say normal or 400, as you can see, they are the same. And when you say medium, medium is the same thing as you saying 500 or 600, depending on the font that you are using like that. So medium will either be 500 or 600 depending on the font. But as you can see, it goes to 700 because this font doesn't support 700. It doesn't support 600 and 500. But assuming I'm using that Roboto now and it's available on my system, you say that it will be using, as you can see, it's not working. So Roboto did not work. Why is it not working? It's because I did not put it correctly. But now that I've put it correctly, it's working. Because I put it small r. I don't have anything like small r. What I have is capital R. And as you can see, it picked the Roboto. And I mentioned medium here. So here now, if this is support 100, it's going to use 100. If it supports 500, you say that, can you say it's going to go there? If it supports 700, if I have it on my system, it's going to go to that weight. And if it is support 900, if I have that 900 installed on my system, it's going to go there. If I don't have it installed on my system, it will not work because this thing is based on what you have on your system. If you have it on your system, it will work. If you don't have it, it will not work like that. So they are connected to each other. So based on the font you're using, the weight you'll be using there have to correspond to that font. But majorly, all of them always have 400. All of them always have 400. Almost all of them always have 700 too, which is the one that will give you the bold text like that. So before we call it a day, the other thing we have on the list here is text transform or text align here rather. So text align is what you can quickly use to align your text there. So we have text align. So you can move your text to the center, or you can move to the right, or you can move to the left. So that's where the text align comes in. By default, all our text, they always start from the left and they will move to the right. But if I want, I can move all my H1 to the center. So anywhere we have H1, as you can see now, they are now center. They are not on the left again. So if you want your text to be center, what you just need to do is to use the text align. and you give it the value center there. By default, all your text will start from the left like that, which is the same thing as you using left like this. So everything will go back to the way it used to be before, or we can use right. So your text is going to be moved to the right hand side. So it will be starting from the right and it will be going to the left like this. But majorly, what you'll be using most of the time is center, because it's always on the left. So if you now want to move it to the center, you can use the center. I've never used right like that. Most of the time, what I use is left and center. I've never used right because you'll be dealing with English, and English doesn't go to the right like that. But sometimes you might actually want to move your text to the right side. I've used it too, but the major one I normally use is left and right. And most of the time, I don't change because it's always left by default. But at some time, your text have to be left on the mobile, and it's going to be center on the desktop, or it's going to be left on the desktop and it's going to be center on the mobile. So you need to be able to change the alignment of your text by using this text align. Another thing that we have here is the text transform, which is what you can use to transform your text from one case to another. So if you look at all these text here, as you can see, the H is in capital, the T is in capital, the I is in capital, and the C is in capital. So what if I want to transform everything to small letter? So here I can use lowercase. So what this one will do is that to transform all your text into small letter. So when you want to convert all the text to small letter, you just use your text transform, then lowercase. But if you want everything to be in capital letter, then it's going to be uppercase. So you don't need to type everything in the HTML. You can actually convert your text to this case from the CSS. So no matter the way you type it from the CSS, from the HTML, this one will always convert everything to capital letter like that. And for the lower, this one will always convert everything to small letter like this. But what if you want the starting point of each one of them to be capital letter? That's where the capitalize comes in. So capitalize will make sure that the starting point of each word will always be in capital letter. Even though you type it like that or not, it will only pick the first one, only the first one. It doesn't care about the remaining one there. It will only make sure that the starting point of each one of them are in capital letter there. So if I don't type it like that by default, or if I save this same back, even though I've typed them like that from this stuff, but look at this one here. As you can see, the D is in small letter, the F is in small letter, the H is in small letter. So what if I want the starting point of each one of them to be capital letter? So that's where this capitalize comes in. So once I save it now, as you can see, the D is now in capital letter, the F is in capital letter, and the H is in capital letter. Only the first letter will be in capital letter. The rest will remain the way you type it. The rest will remain the way you type them when you're using capitalize. But if you use uppercase, everything will go to capital letter. If you use lowercase, everything will go to small letter there like that. And for the other one, this is what you can use the text decoration. This is what you can use to decorate your text, which is what the browser is doing by default when you have a link. If you remember, if you have a link, there is always something under them, which is a line. So the line that used to be under your text, they are known as decoration. The line that used to be under the A tag by default, so this is what we can use to link. For example, now, assuming I want to link to Facebook now, I can just do https like this, www.fb.com. So go to Facebook like this. So by default, all the A tag, they always have underline there. By default, all the A tag always have underline. As you can see, they always have this underline. So how can you remove it, or how can you add it to any other text? That's where the text decoration comes in. But this text decoration here, this is what we call shorthand property. I'll be explaining it more, or what is shorthand property, in our next class. But this single property here, you can use it to change multiple properties. That's what we call shorthand property. So when you have a single property that can change under property, they are known as shorthand property. So this single one now, it can help us to change this text decoration line. It can help us to change this text decoration style. It can help us to change this text decoration color. And it can help us to change this text decoration thickness. So with this single property, instead of me going to different line to mention the text decoration color like this, I can actually set it on this single line along with the other one. So as you can see, it's a property on its own. But instead of me doing it like this, I can do everything on one line. So the first thing we have is the line, to the type of the line you want. So we have the style of the line, then we have the color of the line, and we have the thickness of the line. So this line you are seeing here, you can see it's using blue, which is the text color that is there. So what if I want to change the color to another one? That's where the color comes in. Or you can do it separately like this. So what is the type of the line? So when you're talking about the type of the line, we have underline. So which means the line is going to be under the text. So when you say underline, the line is going to be under the text. But what if I don't want the line to be under the text? I can do overline, which is something I've not used before. The one you can use later on is this line through. So this line through is what Jumia is using on their site to rule over the price. So you know, when you go to some sites where they used to sell something, you see a price that is going to have line over it, while you see the other one, which is what you need to pay for there, like that. So how are they doing it? They are using this text decoration to do something like that. So once you go to Jumia or any other site that used to sell product, as you can see here, this thing normally is supposed to be 12,000, but they are selling it for you as a 7,680 here. So can you see the naira here and the value? The line is being drawn on top of that 12,000. So how do you do something like that? That's where this line through comes in, through the text decoration. So what they are using on that line to do something like that is text decoration, and the type of the line they are using is line through. Line through is going to draw the line inside the text, but if you want it under, which is something you always use most of the time, then you use underline, and it's going to put the line under it. The next thing you can supply is the type of the line you want. What is there by default is solid. So this is the type we are using. This line that you are seeing under it is known as solid, like that. But we can actually use double, so which means the style of the line is not going to be 2, like that. Or we can use dotted. So the browser comes with different pattern of the line that you can use. So now it's going to be dot dot that is going to be under it. So another thing we have there, apart from this style, is to mention the color. By default, it will pick the color of the text. But if you want to change it, I can just say the color is down, is going to be blue. So it's not going to be using the text color again. It's not going to be using whatever color I mentioned. And again, the last one is the thickness. How thick is that line? If you don't specify the thickness, it will use the default one by the browser. But if you specify the thickness, for example, I'm using 10 pixels here. So what this mean is that the thickness, as you can see now, we have more line there. So if I use like 20 pixels, you see that the line is going to get thicker like this. Or if I use 1 pixels, you see that we're going to have a tiny line around it. So this is the thickness. And all this property, you can generate them on a separate line. So instead of you generating them together like this on one line, you can actually do them on a separate line. So we have text decoration. As you can see, we have text decoration line, which is that underline line through. We have text decoration color. We have text decoration style, and we have text decoration thickness. So instead of you mentioning them one by one, we are using this single property to change it at once. And anything that do something like this, they are referred to as shorthand property. And you're going to see a lot of them later on, because there's some property that you can use it to change other property at once. Not that you have to mention them one by one. So if you want to do this thing separately on each line, so blue is going to be here, like this. If you want to do them one by one, like that. So here we're going to have the text like this. So decoration, so text decoration line, which is going to be underlined. You see what I have to type to do the same thing that we just did on line 168. Again, so text decoration like this. What next? It is going to be style. So this is going to be solid. Then the other thing that we have there is the color, and lastly we have the thickness. So the text decoration. Then the next one is thickness, which is that 1 pixels that I use. As you can see, instead of you doing them on separate line like this, you can actually do it on one line by using text decoration. You just pass all the value directly there, and it's still going to work. But when you do it like this, it's known as shorthand. And when you do like this, you are calling them separate. You have to call all them separate when you are doing it like this. But when you are doing it like this, you just pass all of them at once and it's going to work. So if I go back to the screen, you see that we still have the same thing. Everything is still working. But instead of me typing all this in 4 lines, I can just do it on 1 line easily. So I can save multiple lines and I will just have them on 1 line. And there's some other property that behave like this that you're going to be seeing later on. So that's going to be all for today. In our next class, we are going to be talking about the background property, and we are going to be seeing other property that works for your content. And after the background property, we are going to be jumping into this box property, where you can see how you can change the width of your element, the height of it, the border, the margin, and the padding. You're going to be seeing all the same after the background property. And after like 3 classes from today, we should start doing something. After like 3 classes from today, we should start doing something, which is going to start from this basic design here. So we're going to start from this basic or this simple design, because we're not going to be jumping into big stuff. We'll start from the small stuff, then from there we progress through to a big stuff. Where is the QR code? I always love to start with this QR code because it's simple and it's put everything that we've talked to together. So let me bring it out. This is the design we're going to start with first, like that. So we're going to start with this design, which is all simple stuff. Display the QR code image, then create a container and so forth like that. So but some stuff you want to use here is depending on this box property and this background, because you need to understand background, you need to understand this box, and you need to understand this display. And that's the reason why I mentioned that after like this, because after this class, this is going to be 1, 2, 3. So once we are done with these 3 classes, we start working on this. As you can see, so later on, once you talk about all these properties, you know how to make your edge of the box to be curved like this. This thing will not be curved like this by default. The property we are going to learn from this box, the box properties, will teach you how to curve the edge of the box. Again, it's going to teach you how to give a space in between your content. The space here is different from the space here, and again, it's going to teach you how to group things together and give them or to place them side by side, or to place them on top of each other. Because once we move to the next design, you are going to see that there's some content that they don't stay on top of each other. They have to be side by side. For example, here, let me look for that design that we're going to be working on next. I think, where is it? It should be somewhere here. I think it should be this. Yeah, so look at it here. So on this one now is going to teach us how we can handle responsive design, because it's not every time the content you want to work with, they are going to be placed side by side. Look at it. Look at this content here. Some of them are going to be placed side by side, while some of them are going to be placed on top of each other. And again, too, it depends on the screen that you are working on. So this is how it's going to look like when you're on small screen. But once you get to a bigger screen, the design is going to change. Can you see? Now the image is now by the side, while the content is on the right side. When you're on small screen, it's at the top. The other content follows. But once you go to a bigger screen, they are now side by side. So all this stuff here, once we talk about the properties that I mentioned, the background, the box model, and the other one that we have here, which is the display, you will know how to do all these things. And again, in this one, I will now be talking about responsive design, because if you look at it, this is how it's going to look like on desktop, which is placing them side by side. But once you get to mobile, they are now on top of each other. So but first, we are going to start with that basic design that is just the same across, whether you're mobile or desktop. But with the second project that we're going to work on, it's going to be something like this. And later on, we keep progressing there until we get to a point that we need JavaScript to add interaction to our page. And once we get to the time we need interaction, then we'll jump into the JavaScript part there. So that's going to be all for today. Thank you.